Welcome.
Thank you. If you saw my little pieces on that table, the ones that are laying down, that are on canvas, those were my view from that studio. One for each season, because I knew I was going to be moving, so I kind of memorialized it. And I'll get into that in a minute, but I find that color seems to be a big problem for a lot of people. So what I have done here is just made charts, and I'll put them over there so you can look at them later, using complementary colors. What happens when I let them run together, when I mix them on the palette, or when I layer them. And you can see that you can get such different effects. Just
Let's shut the lights down so they can see the screen.
right. You can see that by mixing Scarlet Lake and phthalo, I made black. I can also make black by mixing burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. So I don't have black on my palette. It's very strange talking to a dark room. But I'll put these out over here so that you can all look at them later and see, you know, how much you can really do with just a few colors. Of course, I didn't bring that one over
Jane,
here.
do you do that as you go along, or you before or after the painting?
I just do this as a reference so that people can see.
Okay.
But when I'm painting, I try to stay with a limited palette and not use too many colors. And that's what you'll see here. This is just purple and yellow. This is blue and orange. It's burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. This is also blue and orange, but it's cobalt, and I made my orange with permanent red and Indian yellow. So you can see with a very limited palette what the variety you can get. And believe it or not, this is red and green. This is alizarin crimson, and I made the green with Prussian blue and raw sienna. And because I'm using colors that'll break apart on the paper, I can get such a big variation of color and still stay within a limited palette. The other thing is, I teach a lot, and you'll see I have a round palette. And I found that for students, the round palette is much easier for them to understand the color wheel. And so although I don't particularly like the plastic that this palette is made out of, I do like the fact that the colors are, you know, across from each other and people can understand color theory a little better. I was talking to someone about these tiles that I do, and this is the problem with certain colors. This blue faded. It was a brand that I had never used before, and I discovered that I'll never use it again. Although it looks beautiful here, I want it to stay the way I made it. I don't want to sell something to someone and have them come back and say it changed. And that's the other thing. I have my own list of colors that I recommend when I teach. I don't use any pre-mixed colors. I had bought ultramarine blue from Cheap Joe's own American Journey brand. I was trying to make green, and I couldn't understand why. I'm mixing blue and yellow. Why aren't I getting green? Because I look on the tube, and he's added purple to it. So I have the three primaries. I'm not getting green. On the back of your tubes, it's very small and very hard to see, but usually they'll tell you what pigment is in there by number, and that would be this number that I'm using here. So this particular red that I'm so fond of here is called Red Hot Mama if you buy it from Cheap Joe's. It's called Scarlet Lake if you buy it from Winsor Newton. And it's called Permanent Red if you buy it from Da Vinci. So you really never know what you're getting by the name on the tube. I've had students come in and tell me, look at all these marvelous blues I have, and they've got a half a dozen blues, and they're all phthalo blue. They just have a different name, So I researched it and found the colors that I thought worked well together. There's one particular Indian yellow that I think makes beautiful greens. And I have this book that was written by Mr. Wilcox years ago when he was researching all of the paints because there were so many fugitive colors on the market. And he really shook the market up, and a lot of the manufacturers changed their colors. So 2 years later, he had to write the book again. But it tells you what's in the tubes, and it tells you how light fast they are. And so using that and my own experience, chose the palette that I use now. And like I said, there's no pre-mixed colors in there. So if I'm trying to mix a color, I have an idea of what I'm going to get. I don't know if you can see this, but this was a painting. The name of the book is The Wilcox Guide to the Best Watercolor Paints. And I looked yesterday. It's not available in this country at this time. No, maybe. That's very possible. Yeah, I would look in used books or on Amazon. I went to his website, but maybe on Amazon you could get it used.
Did you find one particular brand that was more reliable than the others?
Because I'm always looking for the most inexpensive for students, Da Vinci was the one that I went to first, but I couldn't always go to Da Vinci. Sometimes I would use Utrecht, which is very inexpensive, or Daler-Rowney, or Winsor Newton, or Sennelier, Holbein, depending on how they made the color. I couldn't get them all from the same brand. And I thought that it was more important that I had, the right colors rather than just to tout one brand. This was a painting that I did in plein air, or started in plein air. Herb, you might have even been there, I don't know. We were sitting out one day, and that's about 4 hours I sat there painting what I saw, and then I had to leave. So I took a picture. Well, I'm sorry, but that picture, I don't know if you can see. Does that help? No? The first way? Okay. I don't know if you could see the whole thing, but you can't see much of anything in the photograph. The photograph just shoots the surface. This is what I saw. So painting from life or with, I would have liked to have brought tomatoes to paint from today, but I didn't have any. But I really, feel that painting from life is very valuable, and it's the best way to work. But what I'm going to do today is that painting that was on the easel, and I have a copy of it here from my book. But what I do when I paint these, well, first I should draw it. That would help.
What kind of paper?
It's Arches, cold press, 140 pound. If I had rough on hand, I would have used it. I like the texture I get from rough. Yeah. So. Oops, I thought the table just settled. I'm trying not to line everything up. I want this one to be a little lower than that one. This is just the first stage, so it's really not important. But just you know, a rough drawing of what I'm going to do. And then I start getting wet. And what I'm doing is I want this to stick to the board, and I don't want it to dry too fast. If I wet the front of the paper, everything is going to just blur. But if I wet the back of the paper, it'll stick to the board, and it gives me time to work. Yes, this is masonite. This one is a sign. You know, I use plexiglass. I use whatever's on hand. I think one of them is a voter sign. Oops, I'm not supposed to move that. Am I still centered in the screen? Okay. So by wetting the back, I'm giving it a chance to stay wet longer while I'm working, but I'm also giving the paint a chance to really soak into the paper. I usually spray my palette, which I did earlier, before I get started, so that it's nice and fresh now. And I want some really wet, rich color. Now, if you were looking at the things I have on the table over there, the roses, the one painting, I masked all the roses and then poured a background. Then I took the masking off when it was dry and painted the roses. The other one, I poured a background and then I lifted the roses out and just added a few darks, but mostly it was lifting. Now I'll move to a different tomato, one that's not touching that one.
What color reds are
This is that Red Hot Mama or Permanent Red or Scarlet Lake. It's PR 188. That's pigment red 188. And if you get a car that's red hot, it's probably PR 188. All through the industry, they use the same number for that pigment, which helps you to know what you're getting. Because it's so frustrating when you buy cerulean blue and you find out that you've got phthalo blue with white added in instead of cerulean blue, and you wonder why it's not doing what you want. Now, my light source is going to be coming kind of this way, so I'm using, this would be called Acra Crimson or alizarin crimson or quinacridone red. Again, it depends who you buy it from. I just want them to blend.
One flat brush and one round brush?
No, they're both exactly the same.
Oh.
I'm just using, rather than putting all the paint in my water, I have done some really full sheet paintings of fruit. And when I do that, I have these Goliath brushes that are like number 34s, and I'll use one for each color because you'd end up with, you know, changing your water constantly and losing a lot of paint.
Do you have any experience with Daniel Smith?
That's a good paint too. Yeah.
They do a lot of mixing colors.
They do, and they have beautiful colors. But like I said, I'm trying to teach people to mix color, so I try not to buy pre-mixed colors. I didn't realize you were going to be in the dark, so I set up my things that I'm talking about, but you can't see them.
Do you want me to be Vanna White?
No, that's all right. Everybody can take a look around afterwards. I'm just looking to see which ones are the wettest. This one's dry here, so
Do you want to say what you did on this one?
that's the roses that I masked first after, and then poured the background, and then took the masking off and painted the roses. Whereas the other one, That's
Why don't
okay.
you put them against the wall right there? It's better.
here, the other one, I poured the background first in layers. First the orange, which someone noticed I'm very fond of. This is that permanent orange, and it's not a real orangey orange. It's kind of a pinky orange, but I love it. And then the next layer was Rose Madder Genuine. And then I did the lifting. So I lifted these roses out and then just went back in, adding the darker areas to bring it out. And the leaves are actually cerulean blue. But on top of the pink, they look kind of lavender. Thank you. I also have the canvases over there, and I paint on just regular canvases because I used to do oils a lot more than I do now, and I had a ton of canvases. So I bought Daniel Smith's watercolor ground and painted that on the canvases, and then I was I'm just using the wrong brush.
Repeat that, watercolor what?
Ground. I have a jar of it over there. You can see it later, see the name.
Is that where you can cover up?
You can just paint, you can put it on anything.
Do you use the texture of the canvas then?
No, no, you don't. And you can put it on anything. Canvas, you could paint on glass if you wanted to. You just have to put the ground down and a couple layers of it and let it dry for a good 8 hours.
Is it something though where if you've done a painting and you have this section that you really hate and you wanted to redo it?
You could probably, recapture. I don't know how well it would blend in because I haven't tried it. But, you know, if you don't like it, what have you got to lose?
When it dries, is it clear?
No, it's white. Although they've now put a clear and a black on the market as well. Originally, it was just white.
And what's it called again?
Watercolor ground.
From who?
Daniel Smith. But I think Cheap Joe's has it now too. You know, he gets everything. So now I've painted the tomatoes. So now it's time to destroy them. You can sprinkle. I talked too much and they dried a bit more than I would have liked. So we'll just help them a little. So that would be my first step. Now, depending on the temperature and the humidity and everything else, this will take quite a while to dry, but there's no telling how long. So we'll put this one aside. See, I reuse everything. This was from this year's craft fair. So this is pretty much what it would look like when it dries. Now I taped it for transporting, and I used a hair dryer on it, which kind of dulled the color a little. But that's what happens to it when I let it just do its own thing. And it would probably look a lot better if I had been able to let it dry by itself. But
Is this going to be step 2 then?
that's step 2, yeah. So this is what we want to do, is add a background. And I'm using a color called green gold, which I understand came available to us because of the automobile industry.
Can't hear you.
It's a color called green gold, and I've been told that it came available to artists because it was so popular in the automobile industry. You know, if they make enough of a color, then it starts spreading out through the various industries, or if it's popular enough. So at this point, there's a couple things I can do. I could put color in a spray bottle and spray it. I can splatter it. I can pick out areas very carefully and then help it move. You know, experimentation is how you grow. I was talking about these earlier, the tiles. The inks are much less controllable than watercolors. They kind of just do their own thing. So that's what I've been having fun with this summer, is painting with the alcohol-based inks on the ceramic tile. And because you're on a hard, smooth surface and you're using alcohol, it just explodes, and it kind of goes wherever it wants and does whatever it wants. And so while I was packing things up today, I thought, why not try it? Because I use this with the tiles. So that's just canned air, yeah. So you can, you know, just experiment. When you're uncomfortable and you're suffering, that's when you're moving along and learning. And I really try to use as many mediums as I can, because I really feel like everything I do feeds everything else I do. Like the inks have me using canned air on my watercolors. You really just never know what's going to inspire you.
To seal those inks on that tile, or does it just dry permanently?
No, it'll rub right off when it dries if you don't seal it. And you have to be careful. You have to seal it first with a water-based varnish. If you use an alcohol-based spray, it's just going to destroy everything you did. So, yeah. And then I use a UV protection to protect the colors. Now, I was at Peters Valley Fair this year, and my booth was in the middle of the long barn, so there was no ventilation, and I had 2 skylights, so I was in the sun all day. So, you know, I really was grateful that I had sprayed them with a UV spray, because I would have lost them. Plus, I don't want to sell anything to anybody.
What is UV spray?
It protects the light from the UV in the spectrum. It keeps them from fading.
Is it readily available? I've never seen it.
I get it from Hobby Lobby.
Place I've never get to.
I don't either. I do it online because it's like an hour away. But they have the Kmart varnish cheaper than Walmart. And if I buy a certain amount, I get free shipping. And so rather than drive there, I have it shipped. And I just buy a bunch at once so that I meet the requirement for the free shipping.
Now, do you use that on the tiles?
Yeah.
Do you use it on anything else?
Well, there's a painting over there, a long, narrow one of peaches.
Yes.
And I wanted to put it behind my stove, and I was afraid of what would happen to it with grease splatter. So I sprayed it with Kmart varnish. Didn't hurt it at all. Kamar.
In the old days, you would use, not craft glue, but what was that gloss?
Mod Podge. I think some people still do. Yeah. But you just want.
I'm old, what can I say?
We all are. But this was done the same way as what I'm doing now. I did the orange, I used yellow and orange to do the peaches, and then poured the water on, and then came back and painted it again, which is what I'm going to do here. If I can keep track of which one's the green brush. But anyway, this is what I would do just to bring that fruit, that red fruit, forward from the red background. I'll use this green. That one doesn't spray enough. I splatter everything.
Besides that green gold,
Not on this one at this point. In the last stage, yes.
I'm just looking because there's a spot right in the upper middle that looks quite green.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
mixing, right?
And I can just pick that up because
No,
I
I'm
think.
not saying get rid of it, it's just that I'm surprised at how dark green it is, just from that yellow.
Yeah, and you know, when I talk or think about my colors, this is a yellow to me.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, from here to here, or yeah, that's my orangey color. Those are my yellows, and then my reds, and my blues. And I try to always think of them that way. Otherwise, it gets too confusing. Especially when I'm trying to teach and people don't understand tertiary and start gently, then hit them with all the other stuff. But I wanted that lighter. I didn't actually want that section so. There, that'll dry almost white.
So you
That's
have
good.
a plan even though it looks so pretty.
Yeah. To a degree. You really can't control it completely. It won't look anything like that one, you know, and none of these look like, although I did them all at the same time, they all look different because you can't control how it's going to splatter or how it's going to roll, how the paper's going to buckle. When I'm working on that first one, it's not taped down, it's only wet. So already, if I move it back, look dangerously, you'll see that, you know, there's places where it's puddling and pooling, there's places where it's warping and pushing, and you get all kinds of great things happening that you couldn't possibly do yourself. You know, you need let the paint do its own. Now, just because, let's see what happens if we sprinkle some alcohol on there. Because again, I've never done that. So we'll put that aside and see what it does. Now this one has dried. Let me see where I'm at. Okay. This one has dried. So now, those tomatoes look pretty sick, don't they? Yeah, no, they're pretty faded. So they need to be painted again.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
If you wanted it to dry, would you then re-wet underneath, or for now you paint it?
No, now I'm just painting on the dry paper. You could, if you didn't like what happened, you could wet it again and do it again. I've done that. You know, when I didn't like what happened. But
Now, that's not the red lake that you use.
that is. That's the bright red again. The Red Hot Mama or orange. Whoops, I went into the orange. The, the Red Hot Mama or Scarlet Lake or Permanent Red. That's it, the PR 188.
Do you think it changed color because you used the dryer?
I do. I do. It dulled it down. I could actually see it happening. It dulled the color.
Now that alcohol that you spray on there,
Uh-huh.
Is that pure rubbing alcohol or do you water it down?
It's 91% alcohol.
Okay, so right from the bottle into the spray bottle.
And from, you know, there's 50%, there's 75%, this is 91%. I tried painting with the 50% and it doesn't work.
Now, does that affect your color also?
We'll see. I never sprayed alcohol on my watercolors before, so we'll watch and see what it does.
She sprayed water.
No, that last one I sprayed alcohol on it.
Intentionally?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I packed my stuff up this morning and it was in the car and I decided to see what happens. And I think that's half the fun. You know, you experiment and if it doesn't work, what have you lost? A piece of paper, a little paint, a couple hours, but you had fun and you learned something. Oops, I almost went into the orange again. I'm running out of red here. And you can see here, these runbacks. That's what I like. They add interest and energy, and they don't go away when I paint over them. They'll come through again. I did a full sheet painting of a bowl of fruit, and I did this, you know, I did each piece of fruit, and then I poured the water. And then I took it to Peters Valley for their open house, and I let preschoolers help me. And the parents were just absolutely freaking out. You're not going to let a 3-year-old paint that. And I just say, sure, you know, what color do you like, honey? You want red or green or yellow? And they'd pick a color and they'd paint a piece of fruit. Kids stay in the lines. You know, and it came out beautiful. Wonder, I don't have that book. The other book has, I think, that painting in it. The one with the roses on the front? Yeah. This painting here, it's a full sheet, so it's, 22 by 30, and these pieces of fruit are huge. They're much bigger than these to cover that big piece of paper. So the kids would get in there with those big Goliath brushes and just help me paint the fruit. It came out.
Did they help you do that one?
Yeah, that's the one they helped me do. And their parents were just, oh, you can't possibly. But look at the runbacks and look at the energy. And then for the strawberries, I threw salt in them to get the seeds. So yeah, it was great fun. It was really great fun. Thank you. Can't be too precious with your paintings. You have to enjoy them. Enjoy the process. Sometimes they turn out. Sometimes I was painting one time, I was painting a bridge, and with my Irish skin, I needed to stay out of the sun. Thought I chose a good spot. I didn't. I had to keep moving and moving until I got to the point where I couldn't even see the bridge anymore. And I said, oh, well, gonna have fun. Came out great. And I just didn't care anymore. So, had some fun and it came out wonderful. You never know. Now those are coming out duller again, and I think it's again because of the dryer on the paper. I think it changed the paper. But that would be the next stage. And we're getting down to the end here. At this point, we've got a background, we've got the tomatoes. So now it's time to start detailing, picking out things that you like or don't like. Now you can see here, this was 7 o'clock last night with the hairdryer, But I was working at the Skylands Gallery yesterday, so all day I was painting.
Where is the Skylands Gallery?
It's off of Route 23, just about a mile or two south of the town of Sussex. It's in Wantage. If anyone's familiar with the area, there's the Sussex Motel, there's the Sussex Meat. I don't know if anybody know what the name of that is, but
Sussex Meat Packing.
yes, Sussex Meat Packing. It's right in that area. It's the Wantage Town Center, and there's condos and apartments. And in the front, there's the yoga center and the gallery and the bank and a cigar store. And last night when I walked out, the whole parking lot smelled like cigars. But at this point now, I'll put away my big brushes. All right. And maybe use some ultramarine blue with my green gold to make a nice dark green. And find my stems. These actually were originally painted from life, from tomatoes on the stems. That wasn't me. No
So
questions?
the original water pour that you did when you were on stage 1, the paint has to still be wet for that to work?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why I wet the back of the paper to slow down the drying process. If I put the water on the front, then it's just going to blur. But if the back of the paper's wet, the paint will stay where I put it, but it won't dry so quickly. And because I wandered off and talked and I didn't, over wet it, and it was on masonite instead of plexiglass, it started to dry a little faster than I would have liked. But, yeah, it's life.
Are these tomatoes in your garden? Or are they
These were tomatoes that I bought in the store, vine ripened, still on the vine, and took to a class to paint one day. Let's see. And I can also, use that. Ultramarine is the darkest valued blue. So whenever you want to make a really dark color, go to your ultramarine. You can't make a dark green with cerulean, and you'll get a medium dark green with cobalt, but you can get really, really dark with ultramarine. And that chart that I had out here earlier, if you take a look at it, you'll see that I made black in that one painting that was only ultramarine and burnt sienna. And it looks like, it's black, but it's just blue and brown mixed together with more blue so that it's cool and looks black instead of warm. Now, if I want that to blur a little, I'll just come in from up here and just give it some place to go. And let it run by itself, and it'll soften out into that damp area. And basically at this point, that's what I would do, is just keep looking for little areas that I want to highlight.
You purposely not put any highlights on the tomatoes themselves?
Yeah, because I really didn't want it to be that detailed, but you could. I could come in if I wanted to. I always keep a bristle brush that's never seen oil paint. So I could just lift a highlight somewhere.
Yeah.
I forgot where I did it. Oh, over here.
Do you have a particular brand of masking that you like?
Oh, yeah. I have two that I like. When I'm working in really big areas, I use the Peebo drawing gum.
I had trouble with that, changing the color of the paper. I tried it a couple of times.
You know what I had trouble with? I was doing a full sheet watercolor of a wicker chair, and I think that's in that other book too. And I left it on too long, and it turned and it sank into the paper. One of the problems is if you don't put it on thickly enough, you can't get it off.
No, I can't get it off.
And if you leave it on too long, especially in the summer with the heat and the humidity, it sinks into the paper. So what I ended up doing, at the time there was a product on the market called liquid paper. They eventually took it off, but I covered it up with the liquid paper, let that dry, and then painted the chair. And it came out,
Ground, too.
hmm?
You can do that with that ground.
With the ground, yeah, but that wasn't on the market back then.
Oh, yeah. No,
You
I'm
know?
saying today.
Yeah, you could do it with the ground. You could even do it with gesso. I mean, there's a million ways as long as you're willing to do mixed media, which I also have over here. These paintings that are against the wall over there are mixed media. They're watercolor, collage, and oil. So, have fun. Oh, the other one I like is the Daniel Smith. And, it's easy to locate where you're putting it, and it'll stay there. And it kind of turns clear, so it's not totally clear. You can still see where it is, but it doesn't change the way that you're seeing your paper and your colors. So those are the ones I've been using, but there's so many on the market. I had tried one time, and it went bad, and it smelled like rotten fish. But, yeah, so, that's when I tried that Peebo, and I've had good luck with it. This one is shot because it's old and it's almost empty. The other thing, keep it upside down, because then the skin is on the bottom instead of the top, and you don't keep throwing away, pulling the skin off and throwing away good masking fluid. So I always store it upside down. So at this point, I'm really almost done with this. I would just sit and I will put it up and look at it. I'll put it where I'll see it every time I walk by and just work on it little by little until I finish it, until I'm happy with it, or if I have a painting that I'm not happy with, I'll put it up so that every time I walk by, I see it, and eventually something jumps out at you. Now, I'm not happy with that background, so I would do it again, But it's a process where you're working on this and putting it aside. And I usually have at least 2 or 3 paintings going when I'm working, so that I can walk away and keep my hands off, because you know how it is. You're sitting there and waiting for it to dry, and you always jump back in too soon. Trying to think what else I had over there. I think that's all of it. I also had a chart there for various ways of doing texture, scratching. There's a million different ways to do texture, and you'll be able to see those when the lights go back on.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you did the tiles again?
Sure.
Do you just buy these tiles at Home Depot, or?
I buy these at Lowe's.
Okay.
The 6x6 is 50 cents. The 4x4 is, I don't know, about a quarter or something like that. Those other tiles that you saw, the tumbled tiles, they're much more expensive, but they're so beautiful. I love them. I wish I could find them again. But what I do here is I just spray it with the alcohol, clean the tile so that there's no oils or dirt or anything on it, and paint on it with the alcohol inks. And they're Ranger Adirondack inks. And there are other brands, but this was Coptic, and that was 5 minutes in the sun. So I had to pull it.
And then what sets them up? You spray them?
I spray them with the Kmart varnish because it's a water-based varnish, and the inks won't move. It protects the inks. Then you can put whatever you want on it after that. I put the UV spray to protect them from the light, and I then seal them with either a gloss or a semi-gloss or a matte, whichever I decide I want for that particular one. And then some of them I frame, some I don't, you know, but they're really a lot of fun to do, a lot of fun. You can see here the alcohol, how it explodes, and here too. You know, it's...
You can use it on Yupo paper.
Yes, you can use it on Yupo paper, you can use it on photography paper, photograph paper, any smooth, non-porous surface. But I just like to do it on the tiles. I think it's fun. And I think it moves even more on the tiles than it does on any of those papers.
Tile is slicker.
Yeah, the hard surface, and yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? No?
Do you want to talk about your other, maybe you want the lights on, maybe talk about those?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, these are, I was doing a demo on the roses and showing everyone the backgrounds. So I had this very wet orange paper that I had done. So to take it home, I took a clean piece of paper and put it on top just to see, you know, so it wouldn't run all over the place. I ended up with this great monoprint of a tortoise head. You know, so you really never know what's going to happen. But I had a lot of these types of pieces of paper, so what I did was tore them up. This is watercolor paper that I gessoed first, and then I tore up the watercolors.
Bring it up right, put it right here, because I'm taking a different camera. Just want to bring them up so they can see better now. I'll do a photo.
I'll bring it over there and put it under the...
Maybe we can move the screen back.
And you can see some of these were where I was testing colors.
We're getting reflections from the overhead light on
Oh,
the screen.
okay. So you can see that
I'll turn the lights off.
some of these are torn pieces that I was using as color samples. Some are, you know, just a little of everything. Tore them up for the trees.
Can I help you home?
That's okay, thank you. And then I painted in oils behind them. So you've got watercolor, collage, and oil all, you know, together. And I did quite a few of these, actually. I have another one at home that's a beach scene. So there's like that raffia straw on it and everything. But, you know, you just really want to have fun with your art. That's the most important. This is on the canvas board. I started it at Peters Valley. I was using masking tape to save the trees. Well, you were asking whether it keeps its texture. Yeah, it kept its texture so much that the paint ran under the tape. I love it. I love what happened. I would never try to fix it. I haven't had a chance to finish it, but I love what happened there. I was saving the white to paint later. Well, it did it for me. So, you know, don't always fix your mistakes too quickly. because sometimes they're better than what you intended to do. Now, these are also on canvas. And they're the four seasons from my studio window. So you don't have to always paint on paper. There are other options. This one, I used the masking just to save the outline of the rose, poured the background, and then came back and painted. So there's also no wrong or right way. It's just what works for what you're doing at the moment. I'd love to be able to have people come up and just paint and pour and have fun on this painting if you'd like. No one wants to come play?
Nature's here.
I don't know, how are we time-wise?
I'll come play.
You're good.
We're good?
A little bit more.
Which version are we playing on?
We can play on any version we want. Well, these are too wet, so
Oh,
we'll
they're
play
too
on
wet.
this one.
Okay,
Yeah. Big brushes, little brushes.
okay,
Just,
thank you.
there's air.
Is this clean
This
water?
is clean. This has some green in it that has a lot of red in it.
Okay.
And that's a great color. I really like.
I just started buying this, and
Yeah.
I love it.
And it wasn't always on the market. You know, it's relatively new, but it's great for making greens. I like this, and I like the Indian yellow, the orangey yellow. They both make just beautiful greens.
Do you do a
I just want to let you know, Terry, you're not getting paid for this.
All right, all right.
Enjoy.
I want you to know, Jane, I'm used to not being paid.
Whoops. Let me get this one out of the way.
So yes, I'm very delighted with the green gold.
Yeah, I love it.
It mixes so nicely.
It mixes, it makes beautiful colors. If you use it very, very
I didn't mean to
thin,
get it
it's
on
a
the
yellow.
tomatoes.
If you use it richer, it's kind of a dull green, but a very spring green. Oh, don't worry about that. Tomatoes have spots.
Not my tomatoes.
Is that the alcohol?
No, that's water. This is
That's water.
alcohol.
How's the alcohol looking?
Yeah, how is that looking? I planted a tomato plant on my deck this summer, and I got one tomato.
Oh,
And I picked it just 2 weeks ago. It was still green, and then I took it inside, and it finally ripened.
Did this come with that spray?
Yeah, and I can't find it again. No, and I love that because, you know, the alcohol, when you put it in regular spray bottles, it kills the bottle very quickly. But Walmart had them one day, and I keep looking for
Rite
them.
Aid, though.
Is that one Rite Aid?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it was Rite Aid.
Rite Aid pharmacy. That's great.
No, it didn't do anything on here, the alcohol. Yeah.
Explain that the alcohol, how do you buy, where do you buy and how do you buy? Go to Walmart and buy.
Walmart, Rite Aid, anywhere. Just look on the label. There's 50%, there's 75%. This is 91%.
thank you.
You found one that has a spread or not? Or you put it in another
Put your own spray.
Oh, this came in a bottle. Yeah. Normally, I just buy it in the container and pour it into a little dish to use. You know, like you would use water or any other medium when you're painting.
You can use alcohol paints with magic markers.
Yes, because they're alcohol-based. And if you look, some of the tiles over there have the 3 little piggies and one has a frog. And those I just did a background and then took the Sharpies and drew on them. Because Sharpies are alcohol ink.
They do the same thing.
Yeah, yep. So that's Sharpies on, I let that dry and then I drew on it. They really are a lot of fun. When I do the workshops, I usually give people about 5 tiles, and it just amazes me how beautiful they come out. They really do. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? Because I really, I've taken this about as far as I can today. It's already too wet to do more, and I don't have another. We went through 4 already.
It's very interesting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm teaching the watercolor. Well, I did Autumn Splendor. We went out to paint, and there was no color. I couldn't believe it. In October, it was awful. Up where I am, I should have been in full color by then. But I'm doing the alcohol inks at Peters Valley next spring, and watercolor in the summer and life drawing in the fall. But honestly, if you want me to do a watercolor workshop, have me come here. It's a lot cheaper than Peters Valley. Shh, I didn't say that.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.